Ubisoft talked about the Assassin's Creed Shadows pre-orders, and they seem pretty good. I want to dive deeper into this though, like, are they actually good? Are they spinning it? What is going on? Let's first go to their investor call that happened a few days ago and hear what they have to say.
Current pre-orders for the games are supportive. The bulk of the pre-orders is still to come. And while we have just reopened digital pre-orders, we are happy to see that our total pre-orders are already tracking on par with those of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, 5 weeks ahead of launch, the second most successful entry of the franchise. Keeping in mind that the Ubisoft Plus subscription service didn't exist at the time.
Yeah, so they're basically saying, okay, some people might not pre-order because they have Ubisoft Plus. So yeah, on par with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Let's hear a bit more about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, how that performed, because they gave a new update later on in the investor call.
So yes, Odyssey has been the second biggest performer in the franchise history, very close to Valhalla in terms of units sold on a comparable time basis. At the time when we launched Odyssey, it set a new benchmark for the franchise, so it was a very successful first week.
Okay, that is interesting. 40 million players now for Odyssey. Small round of applause. That's a lot of players. Of course, that's not only units sold. That's a lot of people playing it through Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, Ubisoft Plus, etc., etc. But the game being on like close to Valhalla in terms of units sold is crazy because Valhalla is still the best performing Assassin's Creed game. Like they made the most money from that. While Assassin's Creed 3 is the most successful Assassin's Creed in terms of units sold. But yeah, what was different, and that's what we're kind of going to look at now, is that they earn more money per game instead of just the units sold. But let's keep going a bit. So I know a lot of people were kind of like looking at this and they say, okay, so this is the first week sales. Odyssey was at 1.4 million. This according to VG charts. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. You can never really trust VG charts. Seems like they're just doing 1.4 million. Yeah, let's go. So I don't think this is true. I think it's more. So, and it would be like less than Origins, while Ubisoft themselves are saying it actually did better. So I think it's better to kind of look at what Ubisoft said. But I wanted to quickly touch on this 1.4 number. But yeah, VG charts usually is just like estimating. They don't really have the actual numbers. So what Ubisoft said back in 2018 about Odyssey is that the first 3 days of sales of the game's release is seeing the franchise's best launch week performance of this console generation. So basically, the data is taken from the game's release through October 7th, and the sales are being compared to Unity, Syndicate, Origins, and the 3 Chronicles games, which were obviously smaller. But that is pretty good. The franchise best launch week performance of this console generation. And Shadows so far is tracking like that too. Now, where it gets interesting is that this includes both physical digital sales revenue of the game, as well as player recurring investment in value. So basically what they're saying is, we got the most money in this 3-day period compared to the other games. But not that it sold more. So Origins, maybe Unity, probably sold more units in the first week, but because, and yeah, if you like go for example to this is what the Odyssey store looked like at launch. There was a ton of stuff you could buy. We had the Pegasus mount, of course. Let's see them. We're zooming in a lot here. We had the Pegasus mount. They for the first time did actual packs. We had the Spartan Renegade set over here. Oh yeah, this was the deluxe edition set. They had like a lot of like naval stuff. So they had basically way more to buy. And if we compare that with Origins, there sure was quite a lot, but it was mostly like single purchases. They did not have the actual gear sets yet. So, and of course they also here for the first time, or not for the first time, but yeah, in these, they had the time savers, which were of course kind of a big deal back then. But yeah, Odyssey had these too. My point being is that, okay, so they're saying Assassin's Creed Shadows is tracking the same as Odyssey, but they're looking at the unit sales, which were probably not that great, But because Odyssey had a ton of microtransactions that people were also buying, it did get them the most money. So I think that's interesting to keep in mind, and that might make the Shadows numbers, people could still spend a lot in Shadows as well, but I think that's an interesting sort of differentiating factor. Still though, if we continue and if we look at how Odyssey performed when it came out, so it launched of course on October 5th, 2018. We are looking at the September 2018 NPD, where it was number 3 already, and that is because the tracking ended actually. So instead of like doing a full month, for some reason their tracking ended October 5th for the September month. But that meant that Odyssey had only 2 days of sales. With that in mind, it was able to nearly get to the top of the list. Assassin's Creed Odyssey appeared at number 3 on the September charts with double-digit percentage dollar sale growth when compared to the launch of Origins a year ago. Assassin's Creed Origins now ranks as the 6th best-selling game over the past 12 months. So yeah, in 2 days, Odyssey sold more than Shadow of the Tomb Raider and like FIFA, and only behind Marvel and NBA. And if we then go to the next month, it actually beat out NBA and was number 3 behind, obviously, Red Dead 2 and Black Ops 4. So, while the first week sales, again, I think were a bit below Origins, but because of the consumer spending, they were able to make more money on that. The tail on the game was really good. Because the word of mouth, of course, people were like, this game is really, really nice. It kept selling. So here we also see at the end of the year, Odyssey was number 10 in the US. So behind God of War, Far Cry 5 that of course launched way earlier in that year. Monster Hunter launched in January. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So yeah, I do think it kind of overall bodes well here. Odyssey in Europe was number 8. It launched in October. So I overall think they're not saying numbers, and that makes sense because they don't want to give away expectations. I think with them saying Odyssey, it really depends. Like Odyssey, the early pre-orders were not that great, but because the game was really good, they could make it work. So that is what Shadows has to do as well. That's gonna be important. Now, if we also look over here, we have like an investor being kind of cagey, and I saw people talk about this too. Of course, Ubisoft is gonna say the pre-orders are looking solid. Didn't they say that before as well? And that's what this guy is asking too.
And I guess a quick follow-up to that. Through the period of the last couple of years where we've seen some disappointing unit sales outcomes compared to your expectations, were you able to see those disappointing outcomes in the pre-orders? In other words, can we assume that the relationship between pre-orders and actual sales that we saw back in 2018, was it, for Odyssey, can still hold in the current environment?
What we can see is that for the curve that we've been observing after just reopening the digital pre-orders of Odyssey, is really supportive of what we can anticipate. But of course, the bulk of the pre-orders for the next 5 weeks is still ahead of us. So what we can see today, it's really positive, and of course we'll continue monitoring this.
Okay, so yeah, they basically dodged the question a bit, but I saw people say, yeah, for Star Wars Outlaws, they also said that the pre-orders were great. I did research; they never said that. So again, they cannot really lie to investors because that's illegal. They never said for Outlaws, the pre-orders are looking good. They were kind of talking like they were saying, yeah, we have the biggest marketing campaign. It's going to sell really well over time, which, of course, did not really happen. But, this Shadow situation is different. That's kind of my point overall. And I do think that it's looking pretty good. It's, again, Odyssey was able to have a great success at the start, but ran with it. They were able to keep that up. That is what's going to be important for Shadows as well. And looking at the amount of games that are coming out in March, not a lot. There's not a lot of competition. Of course, you do have the downside that you're not launching during the holiday season. So obviously, yeah, during Christmas, especially an Assassin's Creed title, people, yeah, like to give that. It's a big mainstream product, so they might not have that boost. It will be fascinating to see, but yeah, I think we can conclude that it's looking good. It's looking solid, especially for a game that had way more kind of trouble during the marketing cycle, to put it lightly, than the previous Assassin's Creed games. I will, of course, be following it here, and yeah, it will be fascinating to see if that can save Ubisoft. But that's a topic for another video, because they have another surprise for the end of their financial year. If that video is already up, you can watch it on the screen, and I will, of course, speak to you very soon. Goodbye.